Welcome to the finals. We have a pretty insane hand here on the draw once again. And we do have Gruul, Guildgate, and Forest, so we can cast any 2-drops, but our hand is actually our most hard to cast 3-drop, a 4-drop, 2 6-drops, and the 7 to 8-drop. So as powerful as this looks, I think we are forced to mulligan. It would be great to draw 2 mountains in a row and then just go Reckoner into Ravager. But if we don't and stumble a bit on our draws, I think it's too dangerous. If this was a mountain, it would actually be much closer because we would be so much more likely to draw into spells we can cast, aka 2-drops, or another mountain for the Reckoner. I'm going to mulligan, but it's really sad to see all these great cards go away. And here we are on the draw with a Disciple and a Key Rune. So if we manage to draw 2 lands, we are fine with our spells not being amazing, but okay. So the question is if this hand gives us a better shot at winning than any random 5 cards. I think drawing 1 land should be okay, should be doable, and then Disciple is a good way to hold the fort. And we have a nice potential to develop. I think I'm going to keep this and see what happens. Our deck, being as expensive as it is, does need most of its mana sources throughout the game. So going down further and further in just the sheer number of cards means that it's so much tougher to cast the 5, the 6, the expensive cards in your deck. But hopefully we can draw a land here. No, we drew another 6-drop. Yeah, these expensive cards are really punishing us, because if we draw a land here, we can either drop the Key Rune or actually just Gruul Charm our opponent's team. So that would have been pretty cool. But we still have that option next turn if we draw a mountain. And it's getting better. So if we draw a mountain next turn, we just 3-for-1 our opponent. And he's milling quite a lot of cards. Scar Guildmage is gone, 1 mountain is gone, but that should increase our chances to draw land, at least. So, whew, pretty good cards going away there. And a mountain would be really great. Nope. Okay, so now we have to hope that Cloud Twin Raptor doesn't evolve. And then we still have our out of just drawing a mountain. And Gateway Shade is a problem. I'm going to say that. Yep. So I'm afraid that this isn't going to work out, so it's a pretty nice block by our opponent, enabling our Blood Rush cards for no real reason. I don't really get that block. He's on 16 and we are clearly mana screwed. So just hitting us for 5 plus another 5 from the Shade would have just almost spelled doom immediately. So now if we draw a mountain, we are still in this game, which is great. And we are forced to just Gruul Charm immediately here. Yeah, I don't see any. Well, it does mean that Greenside Watcher is unlikely to attack next turn. On the other hand, the Greenside Watcher does generate mana, and he might be playing any kind of counter spells, and we lose our most important way to win this game. So I think we have to cast the Charm immediately, and then also we have to take the trade of Watcher and Disciple, hopefully being able to draw into another land or something that affects the board. So that Gruul Charm would have been a lot better earlier. But let's see what's next. Yeah, that's a reasonable 7-7. Thanks to the balustrades by milling so many cards. Verdanthaven, probably not going to cut it. We did keep a one-lander, so it's not unreasonable to be stuck on lands for a while. It's just kind of sad because we were very close to just not only getting back into this game, but actually having a very reasonable shot at winning. So kind of a sad story there. Now we've seen that our expensive cards once again posed quite a problem. He also has a consuming aberration, which is almost unbeatable for us. So this is two things to keep in mind. Now naturalize probably shouldn't come in. Don't really like the red cards here, but the green cards are looking very nice. Tower defense is definitely coming in against his deck, and I like Wildwood Rebirth because he's trying to mill us out, and he has a card like Death's Approach, so that gives us access to our most powerful creatures if he kills them or mills them, and it can also change the math on his Death's Approaches and maybe other cards he has that care about creature cards in our graveyard. Okay, now we have to collect ourselves, and yeah, I'm also going to bring in the Gargoyle and maybe even the Burst of Strength, and the only way to incorporate all these cards is by taking out some of the more expensive cards that we are running, but we can easily take out Verdanthaven and Ruination Worm, and then we need to find one or two more cards to take out. Probably the Tin Street Market, and maybe even one of the other expensive cards, because it's looking like another matchup where we have to be very quick about things. I'm not too sure. I kind of like to have at least one spell in each slot here. Maybe Burst of Strength is just not good enough, given that he has all these flyers. Yeah, let's try it like this. And we would like to play first. Not the best hand, but we have Guild Mage, and if we draw another red source, then we can drop the Reckoner. If we drop the Guild Mage on 2, then we can only drop Reckoner on 4, but that's not a big problem. Not going to mulligan. If necessary, I'm also willing to just attack for 6 with the Guild Mage on turn 4. That's actually not a bad play at all. Now, if we had drawn a mountain here, could have sequenced things differently, but with the Croconora, it's pretty clearly a good idea to just run out everything. He does have a Rite of Precinct 6, so we can actually make good use of the Wildwood Rebirth. And needless to say, our draw is shaping up very, very nicely. That's quite a good blocker right there. Now, I think this is the point where Burning Tree Emissary doesn't allow us to filter into Boros Reckoner, because it does, right? Of course, it doesn't fix our mana, but it also doesn't make it worse because we have a forest in play, and that's great because we can make Croconora larger. Larger not only once but twice, so it's going to get in there. Opponent also has a nice combination here with the white potentially growing, but our board is so large already with 4/4s coming our opponent's way starting next turn. I was gonna say usually DBR decks don't have too many blue creatures to run out after the Denizen, but it looks like our opponent does, so to take that back. And our opponent managed to mill 2 creatures, which is a fine number. I'm not too worried about that. Now, Burning Tree Emissary can't attack into White of Precinct 6, pretty obviously. Croconaur, however, can just run in there, and a 4/4 land is also certainly going to join the party. Opponent is going to want to stabilize, but probably the earliest to do that is next turn. Currently that just wasn't a good block available to him. And now maybe with the Flux Mage, making that white a 4/4 is a potential play. Also milling a lot of creatures would be great for our opponent. A little bit of randomness here this time. Not as much milling going on as in game 1. So that's actually crucial, that the fact that the white didn't grow here is very important. Now, I'm not really scared about Boros Reckoner. If our opponent decides to kill it in combat, then we can just deal insane amounts of damage. And Croconaur is still a fine card. If we make it 4/6, it doesn't really change the math if the white of Precinct 6 also blocks. But getting Ripscare Predator down feels a little bit better than just dropping Disciple of the Old Ways. On the other hand, if we don't drop the Predator, then we can get in with the land as well, and our opponent is down to 9 already, with us also activating Trample. Yeah, let's do that. So what I didn't actually calculate is if we can attack for lethal here. I don't think so, but it's always good to check. So our opponent has 12 toughness. We have 14 attack. So yeah, it does make it isn't lethal, and our 2/2s would just be eaten by his creatures. So this attack still looks like our best option. With all creatures, not dominating, but at least not being dominated, so that's an important part. We do want to get that White of Precinct 6 off the table because it's the strongest card on our opponent's side of the board, and here it's probably better to get the Balustrade Spy out of here. There's an argument to be made that something like Consuming Aberration next turn makes the Sagebrush Denizen better than Balustrade Spy, but I think that's a very minor detail. And now it's very possible that we just attack for lethal next turn. He does have the aberration, so maybe I should have played differently. He does get an extra power on the aberration that way. Not sure. So if we make a 4/4 land and attack with everything, then if he blocks the Reckoner, it's almost the same as not blocking it. Maybe if he blocks it with the Denizen, then it's different. So if you have a 4/4, a 3/3, and 3 2/2s, and he's on 6, it means that he can't take the land and any 2-drop, and he certainly can't block all the 2-drops, because then he would just be dead. So his block, one block for him would be to block the land and 2/2 drops while taking Reckoner and the 2-drop. Yeah, that's probably not what we want. On the other hand, we aren't really getting anywhere here with the 3/3 Reckoner, because it alone would just run into the Flux Mage. So the question is, do we play this defensively for one turn, just dropping Millennial Gargoyle, for example, and then try to win next turn? Or do we play this turn aggressively, even though he has a good block, because we bring him down to 1, and then the Reckoner is basically lethal? No, I don't think attacking with 1 is attacking with everything is what we want to do here. Boros Reckoner is a huge threat, and if he can't get rid of the Reckoner, then he can never attack with Consuming Aberration. So that's a very important part of this game. He has all the answers though, and he has the Sage Road Denizen to continue milling us, so yeah, this isn't looking too great. There's still a lot of cards that immediately win us the game though. Scab Clan Charger, I don't know if that's it, but let's see. If we want to use the Charger, then we aren't using the Guild Mage to make a 4/4, so that can't really be a good deal. However, it does mean that the Boros Reckoner might have a better attack here. Now, if the Boros Reckoner attacks, we have to look at the potential to just get milled here, and that's actually quite a threatening proposition. So attacking with the Reckoner means that we are probably going to see a block by Sage Road Denizen or Mind Eye Drake. If we attack with the Gargoyle as well, then the Reckoner can't be blocked by Mind Eye Drake, most likely. So we are on 16 cards, and we really don't want to kill the Mind Eye Drake, but we do want to get in with Reckoner at this point. If he blocks with the Flux Mage, we can still use the Charger to very good effect, so I'm not scared of that. And that means that Mind Eye Drake blocks the Reckoner, and we get to shoot 2. And we could use the Charger as well, but like I said, it is kind of risky. Alternatively, we can offer up Millennial Gargoyle to Mind Eye Drake, so that the Reckoner doesn't get blocked by Mind Eye Drake, but rather either eats the Denizen, which is great, and shoots some damage, or we can use the Charger on the Flux Mage block. Both of these blocks would be a lot better for us. It's also possible that he just doesn't block the Reckoner, but that seems kind of unlikely. He can't really take the Reckoner. Well, he could go down to 3, I suppose. No, he would just block with the Mind Eye Drake. I'm pretty sure of that, and I'm also pretty sure that we don't want him to mill us for 5 because of the Drake dying. So this attack might be the most stupid thing I'm doing here, but at least it makes sure that the Reckoner isn't blocked by Mind Eye Drake, and I think that's the most important thing here. Like I said, I'm not really sure. Game is already active. But I think by offering up Millennial Gargoyle here, we actually maximize our chances to win. Like I said, I'm not sure, but that's where I'm going now. We do get to deal, what was it? 3, 4, 4, 5. I think it was a 4/5. We do get to deal 4 damage here. So with our opponent on 6, it's clearly either Sage Road Denizen or just our opponent. And I think we aren't getting milled. So I'm going to shoot my opponent. He didn't have a solution for the Reckoner last turn, and now all my creatures are lethal. So it has to be better than going for the Sage Road Denizen that might not even trigger this turn. Yeah, that might have been the best use of Millennial Gargoyle that I've seen. Interestingly enough. Yeah, that was a tough game already, and it's not over yet. But having our opponent on 2 is great, of course. We are still kind of dead to something like Totally Lost. Either-wise could also be somewhat of a problem, but our opponent didn't really play like he had something like Either-wise. And what we can still do is just attack with the Reckoner next turn. We aren't really forced to go all in, because he does need to answer the Reckoner first of all. Actually not the greatest card right now. So I think just attacking with the Reckoner is our safest play. We are pretty soft to something like Grisly Spectacle on Boros Reckoner. But our opponent would have had to top deck it, so that's why I'm feeling pretty confident that he doesn't have something like that. Okay, he does have it. Great. Yep. Milling some cards. And some more cards. We're down to 9 cards in our library, and the Consuming Aberration is at 22/22. Oh, that's great news. So he had the card that we would have had to play around. Not play around, but he had the card where it would have been better to animate a land and attack with everything. On the other hand, we aren't dead yet, and might just still get there. Gateway Shade, milling us for 1, and giving our opponent another creature. So does he attack with Consuming Aberration here? I think we've won this. We just have to figure out the details. So we just generate a blocker here. And chump block. And then we use Gruul Charms. Creatures without flying can't block this turn. Then the Denizen and the Gateway Shade and the Aberration can't block. He only has Mind Eye Drake, so he takes 2. Yeah, looks like that worked. Some insane games this draft. Hope you're enjoying the show. I think we've had some really good games throughout this, and I really don't want to play the late game against my opponent's deck. That's for sure. Especially if you, like I said, Consuming Aberration, it's basically unbeatable for us. It's almost makes you want to board in something like Skullcrack to just get it done. Boros Reckoner actually being the card that pulled it out this game, and I think the attack with Millennial Gargoyle also being very relevant. So what do you do if there's a card that you basically can't beat, like the Consuming Aberration? The only plan is to actually, well, we can try to minimize its impact, and we made a small mistake by not killing the Sage's Road Denizen, maybe. But on the other hand, it's a ground creature, and if you had another flyer, maybe the Gruul Charm wouldn't have been enough. So there's a lot of variables to consider. Also, it's not as clear cut as one would think. So what we could do is go even more aggressive by including something like Skullquack or the aforementioned Burst of Strength. But like I said, I don't think that Burst of Strength is all that amazing in how these games are shaping up to be. On the other hand, we saw that he has a lot of cards that dominate our 2/2s, and that makes Burst of Strength quite a lot better. So I think Burst of Strength, yes. Skullcrack, no. And we probably just want cheaper cards, so Ripscale Predator probably has to go. And we leave this in for the blowout potential to just win it. Kind of like that. And not a great hand, but it's a Boros Reckoner hand. And we are going to keep it. Our opponent's green splash is active for whatever that could be. And we are drawing forests, not what we want to see. Skipping the next turn would be kind of bad. Forest being the worst possible draw, with 4 drops also not being great. But I wouldn't particularly mind dropping the Reckoner later, so that we have Pit Fight mana up. But what I do mind is falling behind on tempo, and drawing another forest is exactly the thing that we didn't want to happen here. Sagebow Denizen, all these cards are fine, but not too scared yet. It's kind of sad that our Skinbrand Goblin isn't really doing anything. Now we draw a mugging at exactly the wrong moment, basically. But overall, we are still doing fine. And if we draw a mountain, we should be able to get back a lot of the tempo with the help of Boros Reckoner. Simic Flux Mage looks like a card that we could use our mugging on, but because we want to hold the pit fight for as long as possible. So yeah, I think we have to take the damage. We have to somehow make sure that we are the aggressor in this matchup, and I can only see doing that by taking some extra damage. Even though this creature is good, our opponent has already shown that he's constrained on mana, so I'm not too scared of that. Now, Gruul Keyrune would allow us to drop the Reckoner, but given how this game has gone, I really want to make sure that I have the pit fight available when I drop the Reckoner. So here we can attack with Millennial Gargoyle, and it does hit for 2. This creature only hits for 1, with the problem being that there's a lot of other cards also dealing damage to us if we attack with the Gargoyle. Now, we won't be able to prevent Sagebow Denizen from attacking, really, but the question is if the 2 damage is worth it, and it probably isn't at this stage. We are pretty far behind in the race, and this could mean that we just take so much less damage, especially like a card like Incursion Specialist could just attack on this board, and we would have to fear quite a lot of cards. We could have actually blocked here with both of our creatures, but with Boros Reckoner in hand, I don't want to use the pit fight before I have to. That's an interesting... Oh, he only has a single black, so this creature is actually pretty bad. I just realized that. Okay, we aren't drawing particularly well, but I think it's time for the 1-2 punch of Boros Reckoner Pit Fight. Simply because this is the turn where we can actually do it. So, simply because we have a good way to utilize the Reckoner and the Pit Fight at this stage, means that I'm going to fight with the Sagebow Denizen, and then use the 2 extra damage from the Reckoner's triggered ability to kill the Syndicate Enforcer as well. And now that the risk of being raised is significantly lower. I think we can attack for 2 here. It does allow our opponent to cast some Cypher spells maybe. So maybe we should have stayed back. That's not a Cypher spell, but a very good card. Needless to say. It's also a 4/4, which means that our key rune won't do anything. Yeah, we aren't drawing a lot of spells. And we need the Reckoner to block the Aberration at all time, I think. Well, on the other hand, if he attacks with the Aberration and we just hit back with everything, that's also quite interesting. However, we don't want Aberration and Reckoner to trade on this board, I think. It's an interesting thing. No, we don't. And the problem is that the Screecher only deals 1 and the Gargoyle deals 2. But the Screecher has a lot more potential for brokenness. But I still think it's correct to attack with a Gargoyle, because one of our outs is our opponent just not having much, not having a lot of spells, or sitting there on double black cards maybe. So all of his cards get better if he has spells, and it's somewhat of a bad spot to be in anyway if our opponent has too many spells. So I think dealing some extra damage there is fine. What we could actually have done was to keep the pit fight in hand, hope that he drops the Aberration, and then we kill him with like the largest pit fight ever. But that would have been a bit optimistic, I feel like. Skark Guildmage, wow. Good thing we played all of our lands. So we can start attacking with 4/4s. So, and every creature is 4 mana, so if we drop the Guildmage we can make 1 4/4 creature. Oh boy, we are down to 10 already, so this game isn't going on for forever. Now, and the question still remains if we are willing to trade the Reckoner for his Aberration or not. Otherwise, the Reckoner can't really be blocked, so that's a good thing. Now, I think we just go on the offensive here, actually drop the land, and then if we activate a land and get in with Reckoner and land, it's very likely that the Aberration just eats the land and the Reckoner gets through. Not the greatest thing actually. So we have to drop the Guildmage and keep it back on defense, and then hopefully next turn we have a better attack to make. But with the Guildmage in play, we can now safely attack with the Reckoner. And we might have been able to do that earlier as well. I'm not too sure about that. So from now on we take 2 from Mind Eye Drake, but only if our opponent is willing to attack with it. And the defensive options of our opponent have also been improved quite a bit with that Corpse Blockade. Our opponent not paying to Axtord. Okay, because of Death's Approach. And we do actually have only a Scorchwalker, I think, in our graveyard. Oh, we get the Consuming Aberration to trigger, okay. And yeah, a couple of creatures. Also a Burst of Strength. That's kind of unfortunate because what I was hoping for was to get an attack with Consuming Aberration going, and then we would have been able to put Burst of Strength on Boros Reckoner and block it. Of course, now that he has Corpse Blockade, things aren't really looking too great. So here we just chump block the Aberration. We can't really block it otherwise. And that land isn't something that we need, so... Thankfully our opponent declines to attack with Mind Eye Drake here. I don't think that's correct, but... yeah. It also doesn't make a big difference, so... Another land, let's just pretend that we have something and pass the turn. At this point, we still have some of our larger creatures to draw, but I don't think that they are going to be enough. Our opponent on 14 with every spell, meaning that he gets another life, is probably unraceable for us. And he's showing us some more nice cards. Here we have Gorklan Rampager and Scarred Goliath hitting the graveyard, but also the Wildwood Rebirth. So one out that we would have had was to attack with Boros Reckoner and make it 12/12, maybe, or attack with as many creatures as possible, and then just make the Reckoner as large as humanly possible, but that out is gone. We are down to 8 cards. He has an Aberration, and it looks like he's just going to mill us out here. Not too sure. I don't expect us to win this game, but I'm also not willing to concede just now. Okay, our chances aren't looking great. We've drawn quite a bit of lands. We might still have some in our deck, I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7 is 12, 13, 14. Yeah, we still have quite a lot of lands left, but this game is basically over. Just trying to see what happens here. Thankfully, our opponent didn't get to copy Scarred Goliath with Lazov, so small victory. I have a feeling that we aren't looking at our best matchup here. And our opponent had some pretty nice cards. We did manage to steal one game, but we didn't manage to be victorious. But I think that was still a pretty good showing from our Gruul deck. The game we did win, we had a pretty nice attack with Boros Reckoner and Millennial Gargoyle. I think that was one of the more tricky attacks I've done. Well, not only in this limited format, but just overall. Something a bit counterintuitive. So, Gruul being one of the guilds I like to draft, as with all the other guilds, it profits from the powerful uncommons, which you can get if the guild is open. And I think we've seen that. I don't know at which point I took the Rampager, but the Charms and the Guild Mage were definitely picked up late, simply because we were in the right color. Also, just some good Gruul commons here, with a mix of Muggings and Blood Rush. Not a perfect deck by any means, but it had the tools to win an 8-4. We did lose in the finals, but anything less than a 2-1 with this deck would have surprised me, because it was just a deck doing what it did very well, even though it maybe wasn't perfectly positioned in the Gatecrash limited meta game. However, we did manage to beat the faster decks, and we did lose basically to Consuming Aberration. I'm not sure if the plan of using Pit Fight to just win instantly was at all realistic. There was also Corpse Blockade in play for most of the game, so I kind of like going for the 2-for-1 there immediately, but we just couldn't really mount an offense with a pretty slow and land-heavy draw. Okay, so much for this Gatecrash draft. This is Simon Says. I'm Simon Gertzen. You're watching my episode on mtgoacademy.com. If you have questions or comments, please let me know. The best thing is to actually commentate on MTGO Academy's website and not on YouTube, because I usually don't check the YouTube comments, but from time to time I do read them, and I might also respond to them. It's just much more likely if you actually do it on the page. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.